Hello, survivors, and welcome to the Zombicide Fans Podcast, where we discuss and review all Zombicide games. I'm Ryan.
I'm Schmedley.
And I'm James.
And today we're joined by our special guest, Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. Hey, Alex, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolute pleasure. All right, so today we'll be doing our review and discussion about Zombicide Black Plague, the core game. And quick reminder for our listeners, head on over to our website, zombicidefans.com, where there's a ton of amazing community-submitted content. Custom missions, custom survivors, heroes, zombies, equipment, house rules, variants, templates, you name it, all kinds of goodies, free to use, free to sign up, submit your custom stuff as well. And you can also find links to our Discord and our Facebook group on the site and in the show notes. All right, Alex, tell us, what kind of board and tabletop gamer are you?
I would generally classify myself as mostly an omni gamer. There's definitely categories I don't dabble in. I'd say the biggest one I don't dabble in would be chit wargaming, where you cut at little corners, punch all that. But outside of that, I kind of dabble in everything. I like, I guess, area control and cooperative games a lot. So there's a lot of games.
Same here. Yeah. I didn't do too much of the chit style wargaming, but I'm pretty much the same. But I think James, yeah.
Oh yeah. I'm a child of the 80s, so yeah, all about World War II and Cold War, war games before there was miniatures.
I have no war games. Closest thing I have is Fort Hendricks back there. So
Nice.
To me, I always just find it funny. There's always Twilight Imperium is the badge of honor of 8 hours of epic gaming, and I don't even know the name of it, but one of those giant world war games, 175 hours something. They gets a little crazy.
I can't deal with Twilight Imperium. I played 2 hours of a game once. It's just, I don't know, man.
All right. Say, Alex, so which Zombicide games and products do you currently own?
Okay, currently I own Zombicide Black Plague, Zombicide Green Horde, Marvel Zombies, and I think that's all I currently own right now. But then I have on its way Zombicide White Death, Deceased, and I think those are the ones, unless you count the Dead Keep as well, which is tangential to the series.
Yeah, for sure. We'll be talking about that more later. Also,
We'll have to decide if that gets an episode.
Yeah, right. So Alex, being a fan of your YouTube content, I've enjoyed seeing your process on how you talk about okay, here's what's staying in the collection, here's what's going, and bravo to you to not being completely pinned down by all Zombicide products forever, like the rest of us here on the show right now.
Yeah, even with those, I feel like it's too much. How much Zombicide do you typically play? How many games of Zombicide do you play a year?
I mean, it's cheating for me particularly, because I play a lot of solo because I can.
I don't care. I count that. Enough. I count it.
Yeah. So yeah. Gosh, how many do I a couple of dozen, honestly, for me.
Okay.
But
so you have to divide those couple of dozen amongst all the Zombicides you own. For me, I might get maybe 10 games of Zombicide in a year, maybe a few more when a new one shows up. But outside of new ones showing up here and there and tilting it, I'd say that maybe I get 10 games of Zombicide in a year, which I have to divide that by the number of different Zombicides I own, which will become very bad math if I owned all the Zombicides.
Yeah, you know what? That's
There's
fair.
only one Zombicide I could probably get rid of, and that's Undead or Alive. Barely ever makes it to the table, but I mean, we pretty much play weekly, and at that point, I just keep it around for the sake of completion.
Yeah, and you know what? Now that you mention it, yes, I'm playing it those kind of crazy numbers. Like I said, a couple dozen right now because I'm doing a podcast, so this is very top, current,
right.
Recency bias. But yeah, when I wasn't super hardcore into Zombicide, so much and still had everything just to have it almost. Yeah, probably I would say about the same. If I'm lucky, I'm playing it 5 to 10 times a year when I'm not super hardcore and very hyper focused about it. Yeah. What about you, James?
Yeah, I don't know about number of games, but minimum 3 days a week. So depending on how well I do in the missions, or my group does in the missions. So, I could be playing at least 24 or 36 games in a month minimum. And what we typically do is we run through cycles. So we'll play, say, Black Plague for a couple of years, and then we'll play Modern for a couple of years, and then move on, from each one to the next one. But there's no reason to get rid of them because someday we may want to come back to them or use components from previous additions into new additions.
Especially for you because you're like a big painter,
right?
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of math. If you're playing a game 3 times a week, again, to me, it's all math. Figure out how many times you're playing it. Figure out how many plays you can expect to see out of that thing, and just figure out if it's reasonable to own it. 3 plays a week means you could own all the next batch of Zombicides, and you're totally golden.
Yeah, a lot of value for him for sure. Cool. Hey, so Alex, what's your favorite and your least favorite Zombicide so far?
Favorite is currently a tie that goes back and forth between Marvel Zombies and Black Plague. I have a hard time deciding which one I prefer. Both have their strengths, and I've gone back and forth periodically which one is like marginally above the other.
Wow.
Least favorite is I haven't played every Zombicide properly, but I want to say least favorite was probably, oh my gosh, it's a hard answer, but I think I'm going to go with second edition. I really liked the theme of it, but sorry, that's not true. I didn't like the theme. I really liked the polish of it. There were a lot of things I did like, but I'm generally not a fan of modern day theme Zombicide. And then I personally found it way too easy and couldn't get it to a point that it was enough of a challenge for me.
Gotcha. Like, and you say couldn't get it to a point, like, does that mean you were adding in expansion content just to see if you could tweak the difficulty, or what were you doing?
Generally, when I play Zombicides, I find that some are a little better balanced out the box. At least for what I'm looking at, like Undead or Alive is actually, I find the appropriate level of difficulty outside the box. I find things like Black Plague, I have my system as far as how I modulate the game rules that makes it work for me. But then with the second edition, I tried adding things. I tried stacking the deck with more abominations. I tried removing all the lower number spawn cards, and then I also the biggest one was I got to a point where I never was actively trying to like, let me see if I can die, because you can obviously die. Just walk into a horde of zombies and don't do anything about it.
Yeah.
But I tried doing all those things I just said while making completely and totally reckless decisions, and still we couldn't lose. We just couldn't lose. Like we were being irresponsible and stacking everything and couldn't get to a point where we were losing. Contrast that with Black Plague, and if I opened the door on the wrong turn, I have 3 wolves staring down at me and I'm dead next turn.
Yeah. That's interesting. Wow, I'm surprised that second edition has been like so easy for you. That's wild.
Yeah, and maybe it's just a me thing. I don't know. I never know for sure, but I just know that I've dabbled with enough Zombicides and given them enough time that unless I was doing a rule wrong, something was off.
Yeah. I tend to like an easier game, and I also like the modern theme. I'm more biased towards the modern theme for sure. I just enjoy that theme, that setting. It's just, if I think of zombies, I think of that, and I want to play that. I want to play, I want to experience Walking Dead, the board game, air quotes. I know there probably are Walking Dead board games, but they're nothing near as good as Zombicide. I'm sure. I don't know that, but I'm guessing.
I imagine if there weren't, I can't think of any. I imagine if there weren't Walking Dead board games, we'd have Walking Dead Zombicide though.
Oh, there definitely are. I haven't played any of them, but there's a few. There's I think Cryptosaic did one with its more miniature based. There's also like Bang the Walking Dead and various versions like that.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah, I had that for a minute and I never got around to playing it. All right. And last thing, Alex, we'd love to hear, just tell our listeners, what you've been up to.
I mean, literally the past few days, I have this giant box behind me that I don't know if you can see over there, but
Ooh.
I've been assembling a giant insert for all my Marvel United content, which is going to be like 3.5 Calyx cubbies worth of insert to do this. But it's fun because you got these cool trays of just miniatures that slide in and out of these shelves. It's just fun little, I don't know. It's a better version of assembling it than what I currently have, and so it's a lot of work to assemble it. So I've been popping on some of the Good Wife, and it's just assembling Marvel United inserts for the past 2 days.
Wow. Yeah, that game needs it. And like, okay, here's the thing about Marvel United for me anyway. Smedley, James, do either guys have Marvel United? No. So I've gotten into the trap. I'm all 3 campaigns in, and I just got the shipping notice for the multiverse today. Today I got all shipping notices for that and for Cthulhu and for, I guess that's it. But So I'm like, yay. And I'm like, oh no. Because I'm like, I got to organize all this stuff. My problem with Marvel United, real quick, get on my sandbox, is that it's like, it's the most overproduced, and I never say this about games because I'm extra and I like everything being extra, but it's like the most overproduced filler game I've ever experienced. Now maybe
Yes.
I probably need. Oh, thank you.
I mean, yes, it's not going to deny it.
Like I probably need to play more of the expansion content to get it to be like more crunchy, more rewarding, or more worthwhile.
Yes, again.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. But those dang chibis are just so irresistible once you get them in your hand, and especially when you paint them. Oh man.
If you're looking for some my quick recommendation, just play against the Sentinels, the 3 Sentinels Sentinel Challenge. There's many ways to play Marvel United that will make it significantly more rewarding than just playing the base game, and it absolutely is the most overproduced filler. But the Sentinel Challenge I find is very mentally rewarding. That it's like you'll have a new level of appreciation for the game.
Nice. And I have another hobby, which is it'll take me a lifetime to paint all of it.
Yeah, that's actually what's turned me off so far. I become increasingly tempted as time goes on, but the art style just doesn't do it for me.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the chibi aesthetic.
All right, let's talk about some news. Yeah. All right. So the latest from White Death is that they're showing us the Eternal Empire mass production copy, which is getting exciting. We're getting closer. You know, I just love seeing all this stuff. You know, and it's just getting me more excited. Like this is getting closer to being in my hot little hands. So they're just showing off pictures of, you know, the box and the insert and the tiles, all the different little wiggly tokens, whatever those are. And the different miniatures
Like
look really
mana,
cool.
yeah.
Like I don't know what these things are called. Like the cat dog statue things. What are these things called?
Cheese statues.
Cheese statues. Okay.
Yeah, and the tokens I
Okay.
think are chi as well.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Cool.
gee, that makes more sense.
I like it. And yeah, Eternal Empire is one of those campaign like Fort Hendricks or Washington DC kind of expansions. So you got your thematic note cards and those sort of things in there as well. And yeah, there's all that chi going on. I'm a weirdo, and like I kind of compartmentalize. Like I get all excited when a Kickstarter or a GameFound campaign is going, and then I compartmentalize and forget about it. So I'm not too driving myself too crazy over time. So some people are sort of raging about this, that some of the retail stuff has been showing up in Australia on shelves.
Oh, I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah. So on Facebook, Joshua Rosny, he surprised. I was just surprised and delighted. He surprised everybody by just showing them, like, look what's on the shelf at my LGS. It's the Time Crash expansion, it's the core box, the Terracotta, the Crossfire pack. It's the retail stuff. So that was interesting. And it's a lot of, of course you're getting people with different mixed reactions. Like, oh, that's so cool. But like our stuff is going to have exclusive. Well, I'll wait for it. And then other people that aren't so, happy or excited about it. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. But yeah, ours are coming. I mean, the original delivery date for White Death was May 2024. I was looking at the page earlier. Does anybody know what the latest?
Is that long ago?
Yeah. Does anybody know the latest of when we actually are when we should actually expect it?
I believe it's supposed to be shipping in like a month or so. Is that not I could be completely wrong.
I haven't seen anything from CMON officially.
What was I saw a schedule on one of the updates at some point, but I don't remember what it was.
Yeah, I think
there's been people that have claimed that retailers are telling them that it's supposed to come in at a certain date, but that doesn't mean that we're getting it delivered to whatever part of the U.S. you're in.
Interesting. I have to go find it. I thought I saw something, but I could be wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see an updated delivery date. I just see everyone saying Australians are receiving them.
All right.
I don't know if that means like actually receiving them or if they're talking about the game stores.
Yeah. All right. And then the Dead Keep is something we're always kind of keeping our eye on too, and especially mentioning it today for our Black Plague show, because it's, it's basically like the non-Zombicide branded Zombicide Black Plague game. So it's featuring a whole world with all this amazing art from Paul Bonner, which should be a familiar name. He did guest boxes for Black Plague and other Zombicide and other products for CMON. And if you hadn't seen it, unfortunately the pre-order's not open anymore. The campaign closed a long time ago, but it's getting closer and closer to production and getting in our hot little hands. And it's wild. It's like it's basically Zombicide. So when you look at the page and you look at all the content, the dashboards are almost exactly the same. I mean, there's little tweaks to it. The way that the survivor ID cards show up, or maybe they're heroes in this one, are very, very similar. Almost exactly the same, I should say. Blue and yellow, orange and red abilities. I even saw like one of them was like Iron Hide, which is like sounds familiar. The equipment cards and the way the stat lines work on the cards are all the same too. So it's wild. Does anybody know like why CMON didn't brand this a Zombicide thing? Anybody have any ideas?
So this did come out. This dropped, the first news of this, relatively shortly after the Deceased campaign, where one of the biggest ongoing sentiments was the oversaturation of the brand. So I'm wondering if they were just kind of trying to distance it or see how the mechanics stand on their own.
So it could be. I do think that the actual gameplay was different enough that it's all the Zombicides tend to follow a little bit of a script that makes them feel very similar. Marvel Zombies did do enough things differently. There's definitely a shift from that. But this was like, I think, the biggest shift, despite still being, a good chunk of it is very Zombicide familiar. For whatever reason, they did actually branch out from the core things. Like it feels like 75% Zombicide, and then 10% Massive Darkness and 50% Cthulhu Death May Die. There's little elements of all these things together, and I don't know why they chose to go there. I liked the overall combination. To me, the biggest weakness was the final boss battle felt like it was reminiscent of Cthulhu Death May Die, but not nearly as satisfying. And to me, it was an excellent overall game. But I think the final boss battles needs a little bit of work to really hit that top level echelon.
I think my biggest head scratcher for the campaign is why would they not put in a crossover pack for either Black Plague or Massive Darkness or both? I can only imagine that they would have sold so many more Kickstarters if they had done that. But
yeah, that's right. Thank you, Alex, for reminding us that you actually got your hands on a demo copy for review or preview, right? And played the thing. So yeah, thank you for that perspective. And that's cool.
I thought it was great. It's different yet familiar.
It's great. And I mean, I love the art. It's so unique and it's so cool. And it's so almost 70s, like sword and sorcery, media. Like it's really cool.
Yeah, it does have a very nostalgic fantasy kind of vibe.
Mm-hmm.
I also feel like it's the product that people wanted White Death to be. I think there was a lot of people from the White Death Kickstarter that didn't like the whole Eastern theme. And this is what they wanted. Again, why not come up with a crossover kit where you can use
the no crossover is odd. I'm wondering if like I said, that there might have been something to do with the Deceased controversy, which we saw replay recently in Cthulhu Death May Die.
Yeah, I mean, I could only theorize that
for a different podcast, though.
Yeah, I can only theorize that CMON, they prepare branding and have their they have their roadmap planned much further ahead, I think. And I kind of doubt, this is speculation, that they would last second be like, rip all the Zombicides branding off of this thing.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm wondering if there wasn't any social media, hey, check out this Zombicide game.
Yeah.
Because of that. I don't think they would have ditched an entire crossover.
Yeah.
because there's too many other things that are so like different. I mean, the shift to all Paul Bonner compared to Edward Guillotin, the fact that they did a different model than the typical giant Zombicide campaigns. It was neither one of the like small ones like a retail Zombicide. It was
Mhm.
too big for that, but it was too small in the structure from a typical full-on campaign. There's just too many things that there still is the question. The question is still great, but like I don't. It was clearly intended as a different product while still carrying over a lot of similarities.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. I'm excited to play it. I'm excited for the big boss mode at the end of a given like quest. Thank you for reminding me about that. I forgot. So that's the Cthulhu Death May Die sort of aspect to it, right?
Yeah. The way you have a boss that you kind of kill and it pops up and kill and pops up, and that definitely had that element there. But again, I think Let Me Die handles that so much better, and to me, that was the weakest part of this.
Interesting. Well, hopefully there's more content, that they have in here that has sort of deeper or more, just more rewarding bosses to fight, or what have you. If not, the custom community is always here. All right, last thing in the news, Massive Darkness, Dungeons of Shadowreach. So we talked about this before shortly on the show when they were very, teasing this very lightly, very light touch tease at the Simon Expo in Bangkok in Thailand. And now they've got a preview page. So, if go, walk, don't walk, run to GameFound for Massive Darkness, Dungeons of Shadowreach, if you're into this sort of thing. And it's, I don't want to talk about it just for the sake of like me being such a huge Massive Darkness fan. And I know, James is as well, right? No, sorry to speak for you. But
this is going to be my jumping on point. Yeah. That's something we'll all share.
Yeah. But it's also, with all the previous Massive Darkness campaigns, they've had crossovers with Zombicide Black Plague. So you could bring, survivors / heroes from one game to the other, and or enemies from one game to the other. So hopefully we'll get to see that again with this one for Zombicide fans. But otherwise, it's just a really exciting project. And one thing that makes this very unique is that they're going to have a tabletop role-playing game, TTRPG, that's 5e compatible. So that's D&D 5th edition compatible. Now, what I'm curious about is like, I don't know whether or not they're going to have their own Massive Darkness RPG, and then they'll also have a 5e compatible book to go along with that or not. So that'll be interesting to find out.
Yeah, I'm wondering how well that'll do, because Zombicide Chronicles kind of faded into obscurity.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's also interesting because there was the Zombicide Black Plague Bearer RPG that got delayed or canceled. And yeah. They said that they did that they delayed it. So they released like a one pager or a couple of pagers of rules, right? For Free Comic Book Day. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
But then sometime later they're like, we're delaying this project. So I'm kind of wondering if they're folding that into this. All right, that's it for the news. Next up, a review and discussion about Zombicide Black Plague. Check out Board Game Goodies and save 10% with coupon code PODCAST at the URL boardgamegoodies.shop, where you will find various game upgrades and accessories, including the new Zombicide Black Plague and Wolfsburg inserts designed to store literally all products from the Black Plague campaign in just 2 boxes. So if you only have the Black Plague core box or the Huntsman Kickstarter pledge, you could go with just the Black Plague insert. If you have the Night pledge and or also need to store your Wolfsburg and all additional add-ons like zombie bosses, even all of the artist's special guest boxes, you could fit it all in here. There are a bunch more goodies for other Zombicide games, as well as other games like Massive Darkness, Cthulhu Death May Die, Marvel Champions, Lorcana, Star Wars, and more. Listeners can save 10% with coupon code PODCAST over at boardgamegoodies.shop. Zombicide Black Plague is a cooperative board game in which players take on the role of survivors in a zombie apocalypse in a medieval fantasy setting. Players control a party of survivors as they fight to rid their towns of zombies controlled by the game itself. Survivors find weapons, equip armor, learn spells, battle zombies, and gain experience. The more experience they get, the more powerful they become, but the more zombies rise to face them. So in a game of Black Plague, the goal for each quest is to complete the quest objectives with at least one survivor standing. Every quest is unique. Each run of the game has a player phase, enemy phase, and end phase. So in the player phase, the first player activates all of their survivors one after the other in any order they choose. And then when they're done, the next player's turn begins. So on player's turn, their survivors can perform 3 actions. They can move, search, attempt to open a door by bashing it with the appropriate kind of weapon, reorganize or trade inventory, a combat action, which is now magic, melee, or ranged, enchantment action, it's like casting an enchantment, take or activate an objective token, make noise, or do nothing. And then after that, it's the zombie phase. All the zombies on the board activate. Just like previous Zombicide games, the zombies on the board activate. They attack a survivor if they can. If not, they move to the nearest survivor they can see or the noisiest zone on the board. Then after that, you spawn new zombies on every spawn zone on the board. For every kill that a survivor gets, their XP increases. Once XP reaches certain thresholds, number of kills, it gives the survivors more skills and it amps the game up from blue to yellow, then orange, then red danger levels. The higher the level, the more zombies will spawn. This version of Zombicide features walkers, runners, fatties, abominations, and now necromancers. When a necromancer spawns, they also produce a new spawn point on the board, and then they try to escape the board to make that spawn a permanent spawn. However, if you kill the necromancer before they escape, you get to remove a spawn zone from the board. All right, so there's a bit more, but that is just a quick overview of the rules, and now we're going to go ahead and dive into our discussion and review.
All right, here I got some stats. Zombicide Black Plague was, of course, the first Zombicide game not in the modern setting. Its crowdfunding campaign ran for June to July of 2015, getting over 20,000 backers and raising over $4 million. And like First Edition, at the time it was both CMON's and Kickstarter's most successful campaign ever. And we'll see the CMON record get broken a few more times, but as of now, it is the last time Zombicide held the Kickstarter record for most funded Kickstarter. On Board Game Geek, it sits at a score of 7.6, which is comfortably above every First Edition box except Toxic City Mall, but overall slightly below average for Zombicide products. So we could talk a little bit about what earned it that score.
Wow, that's fascinating. I didn't know that CMON held the title for the highest funded Kickstarter project at any given point.
Zombicide First Edition also had it, yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's great. All right, so what makes this version of Zombicide unique mechanics-wise?
I mean, the starting point's going to be the Necromancer offhand.
The first thing that... Oh, we could talk about the Necromancer. I was going to talk about the equipment levels.
Yeah, I think the Necromancer is definitely the most unique thing about this version of Zombicide, not only from previous editions, but any other edition going forward. There's not a whole lot of other mechanics like that. It was definitely new to our group. Learning how to deal with it was certainly a fun challenge. At first, we took it not seriously enough, and then we took it too seriously. So we kind of went back and forth about that.
There's definitely an over-under on that because it is, I mean, it's a walker with some extra steps. So they're definitely not that hard to dispatch if you get to them. But they represent a lot more danger left unattended.
Now, is this the only Zombicide with a armor, like a body armor slot on the dashboard?
I mean, if you don't consider the armor from Rue Morgue, I don't know if you ever played the, anti-person, the competitive version of Zombicide, but you had body armor in that version.
Oh, cool.
Did it have a slot? Because, I mean, there's like the goalie mask and like the riot shield in second edition.
So that's a yes and no question. Out of the box, no. But after you'll see at the end of this podcast, yes.
All right.
Interesting. And then the other thing that stood out as unique to this one is the double spawn cards. I don't think we have that in any other version.
Double spawn is interesting. We'll get to this a little later. I always forget that it's a lot nicer than I play it. I always spawn double and then just go to the next one. You're supposed to skip and spawn double next time. But like I said before, the equipment levels is unique to this one, and that's always been odd to me because there's no reason that's not like a super fantasy themed the way necromancers are. But it's been very interesting. It's been a very interesting way to tame some of the randomness of the item drops, where you can get a really powerful bow, but you can't use it until you kill a few more things.
Yeah, and I'm kind of sad that's not something that they continued, because I always appreciated that you have this giant deck, but the downside of the giant deck of random stuff is, like you said, you can get that really powerful thing early game. And this is like, hey, you have it, something to look forward to, but you can't touch it now, can't touch it now. Like, I really liked it, and I'm sad that they didn't keep that up.
Although
kinda
that's not in
like-
the base game.
Black Plague
Oh,
doesn't
is it
have
not?
the
No.
zombie levels?
It's
Aren't
not
the vault
on the base
weapons
game.
orange?
The vault weapons are just vault weapons. You get 2 vault weapons. You can use them at blue. You can use them at yellow. It's not until you play Wolfsburg that you get the
Interesting.
different.
Oh, I might have not
levels, yeah.
separated out my stuff properly then.
Oh, I
We
mixed
definitely
everything
got
together,
some stuff.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So yeah, this the way that we run our show, it's a little bit anachronistic, right? Because we it's almost like a replay sort of a thing. So kind of with that in mind, like going back to what was your first experience playing this now very old? What year did this come out again? Zombicide Black
2015
Plague.
officially.
2016 it was fulfilled.
Nice. Cool. Yeah. So, Schmedley, like, what was your first experience playing this one?
So Black Plague, I actually got pretty late. I started off completely in the modern setting. My first non-modern was Invader, and then I got Black Plague kind of as I was filling out my collection. So 2 years ago, maybe 2022, the first experience was it and Green Horde. I think we played Green Horde first, even pushing Black Plague out even further. But I mean, it was fun. It was definitely going a lot back to, because it's just after first edition, so a lot of the quality of life things are there's no abomination deck, even though there's a good bit more abominations than in first edition. But they have the ID boards, at least the survivor dashboards. But overall, it's definitely fantasy based, but I feel like in terms of the game feel, the vibe, it's very much the same as first edition.
So for me and my group, we were late to the party as well. We weren't part of the first Kickstarter. Again, I don't know that I knew what Kickstarter was when this first came out, but we ended up getting everything retail or secondhand. Started playing it about 2017. And once we started on it, though, we just continued all the way through. Once Green Horde came out, obviously we filled out everything there. But my group was pretty consumed with this game for several years. We really liked it. We liked the changes from the classic Zombicide. We really enjoyed the necromancers, the double spawning, the weapons, the theme. Being old fantasy players from like Warhammer games, we really liked the whole theme of it. It was a really good time.
Yeah, I dove in late. This is actually, I can't remember. I didn't back the Kickstarter. I got in a little late. That's when I first started playing Zombicide. Until then, I'd had this opinion that any board games that had tons of plastic miniatures were kind of not really board games. Real board games involve planting crops, not playing with miniatures. But I think Blood Rage kind of eased me into that, being comfortable with giant miniatures on my table, and so I decided to finally try Zombicide out. I got Black Plague as my first Zombicide game, and I immediately was hooked on the entire experience.
Yeah, it's funny that you said that, Alex, because I was exactly the same. I started out like as a hobby board gamer with Agricola, and like my mind just exploded with like just amazement at like what you could do, like because that game is such a brain burner, right? To me it was like the hardest thing I could ever done in my life was to like feed my people and grow my crops, and it was like it was such a great thing. And then to me, like that was board gaming, and like your dice chucking games, beer and pretzels games were like that's child's play, whatever. And now I'm much more diverse. Now I'm like all over the place. Now I like heavy Euros, light games, party games, all the games, obviously Zombicide. Uh, so yeah, I got into this late as well. I had to double check. I actually got into this probably 2021, whenever Massive Darkness filled. Whenever Massive Darkness got here, Massive Darkness 1. The Kickstarter for that was 2020, so I'm assuming it got here 2021 ish. But yeah, because there was the Black Plague crossover stuff, I was like, well, gotta get Black Plague now. I was already a hardcore collector of the the modern setting stuff, and I remember like when the campaign came out, because I think there was a pretty like ubiquitous sentiment of like Zombicide fatigue, after season 1, then season 2, then season 3. And I love them now. But back then I was just like, wasn't really into it. I still got them. I still collected them because it's like, I really do want to play all this one day, but I wasn't like, oh my God. So yeah, then I was like, oh, Black Plague setting. And that's cool. I could see. Yeah. That's a really smart way to refresh this whole thing. And so appreciated it from that standpoint. And then, yeah. And then I got it. I just got it for the miniatures to play with Massive Darkness at first. But I was like, there's a good game here too, I'm sure. And I'll be playing that as well. So, so my first experience was, way after that, playing it. Probably first time I played this game was probably like a year or two ago. And I played it with my wife, and she does not like a hard game, and it wasn't that fun, to be honest, our first experience, because the double spawns were wild, the necromancers were what? and yeah, it was a wild time, because I'd always tweaked our Zombicide first edition experiences to be a little easier, giving extra health, throwing in VIPs, or not VIP. Yeah. VIPs to make it a little easier, that sort of a thing. So, in my house, it's typically, we like a little bit of an easier game. But yeah, it was an interesting first experience, and I'm so glad for this episode and this review, because it's spoilers. Like I appreciate this game so much more now, actually.
Hey, all right.
Yeah, let's talk about the components in Zombicide Black Plague. So what have we got in here? We've got probably the most important Zombicide development component wise. Who wants to shout out what that is?
Is that the
The
3D
dashboard.
dashboards?
That's right.
Let's go. Yeah.
It's a unanimous vote. The plastic dashboards. Yeah. Change the world, right? Yeah. Having the plastic dashboards, because before, like some sort of animals, we had to have like just a cardboard card, and it was sliding things around on it in Zombicide first edition. So yeah, this one obviously introduces the pegs that you insert into, for anybody that doesn't know this already, right? Like the pegs that you plug in for your health and your skills. It's also
another thing you probably notice immediately on opening the box, if you're a fan of first edition, all your survivors are the same color now. And that's a decision that's been maintained through all the rest. Yep, in first edition, every survivor came with their own color that matched their card. And I'm sure that was a logistical nightmare.
Yeah, good point, Schmidley, on that.
Now you have the bases instead.
Yeah, good call out. Do you feel like that's better or worse, Schmidley?
I do like the different colors on the board. But in terms of easily reading a situation, I think all the survivors being the same color is better to differentiate like the kinds of the factions on the board.
So coming from a person that does paint, I still find it very helpful, the color-coded thing. So in the previous 3 editions of Zombicide, as was mentioned, the miniatures were different colors, but if you played with enough different survivors, you would still run across different survivors having the same color. But what I really like is just the whole theme of color coding your eggs to the base of your miniatures. And also, if you really wanted to go crazy and give your friends their own colored dice, so the dice match the pegs, you can really, trick up the game if you want to go that route. Yeah, and the survivor dashboard is just such an amazing. It's the biggest, best invention that Zombicide has ever come out with in any of their games. This basically set the template. It reset the game. As I mentioned before about the body slots, so one of the first things I did when I got this game was I found somebody online that had repurposed all the classic survivors to fit the same ID cards as Black Plague. So you could use your plastic dashboards. And what did they give them? They gave them a body slot because you could have body armor or the goalie mask in that slot.
That's nice. That's a good one. Like we were talking about, like how I never really went back to the original Zombicides, and one of the many factors was playing with those flimsy dashboards is a major downgrade.
Yeah. The worst
It's something we all
offender.
went through.
Yeah, the worst offender with first edition to me was like the little tiny arrow things that pointed at the skills. Ooh, painful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very bad.
Yeah. Does any of the components like really stand out or most endearing to you, Alex, from Black Plague?
There, but I think the dashboard is obviously going to be the biggest thing. I do have the nice plastic upgraded components for the various token upgrades, and those have a nice premium feel to them. Even like the little trap doors, there's a little like a bit of a texture to them. They're absolutely amazing. But yeah, I think overall the miniature quality was a nice step up at that point. If you compare first edition to subsequent editions, it really feels like they really took their sculpting to the next level. So like a lot of solid upgrades. It's really is why I kind of entered at Black Plague and had a hard time going back to the earlier stuff, which I tried to do just to experience everything.
So one other thing I'd like to point out about the components as well is out of the box with just this box and not including anything else, this was the first set to have multiple sculpts for the fatty brutes and for the runners, whereas all the previous 3 editions had one sculpt for each type. Now, obviously, with Prison Outbreak, you had a different sculpt for the fatty brute than you did in the first edition. But if you didn't own the first edition, you would still be stuck with the same sculpt.
So as far as like the art style, this is definitely a very distinct art style, this Black Plague. From the font to the color choice to the little flames and like the little sort of gems that are on silver, like embellishments and whatnot. What do you think of that?
As far as the rulebook goes, in the graphic elements, the woodcut look logos for each of the chapters is a fun touch for the period. It seems very era specific. I know, fantasy's not era specific, but it looks medieval looking. And then also carrying that through into the equipment cards with the little symbols in the back. So if you do end up mixing all of your content, you have some idea of how to unmix it all if you go by the symbols on the equipment cards.
So in general, I love the art in general of most of the Zombicides outside of Invader, actually.
Yeah, I it's funny, like I like the little illustrative flames. Like it's definitely a unique thing, but it's also kind of, I don't know, it always feels like slightly out of place to me, but it's cool too. I don't know. Do the flames bother anybody else at all?
Never even thought about them.
Cool. Well, one thing I appreciate
right,
for the graphic design on the cards, like especially the spawn cards or the zombie cards, is like it's much more clear what you're spawning here. Because this is compared to first edition, right? Kind of thinking again, we're kind of anachronistic here, kind of chronologically against first edition stuff, modern classic. It says the words fatty, runner, walker, abomination on it, and the silhouettes are much easier to read
Instead
too.
of just As far as horde zombies go, this might be my favorite iteration of the spawn deck because I do really like different types at different adrenaline levels.
Yes, completely agree with you.
And this is the last game. Well, this is the last setting that has that.
Are you talking about
definitely
like
a step downwards? Well, the fact that you could have like, let's say, like you might have something like say nothing spawning at blue level, then two runners at yellow, and then 2 fatties at orange, whatever it is.
Yeah.
The fact that it really could shift up as opposed to more modern iterations are simply quantity only and no other change. I like that mix up going on.
The one thing I like is they went back to what they did in season 1 and season 2. And whenever they have extra activation cards, there's no artwork at blue level. It just says nothing here. Because in season 3, they added silhouettes of zombies again. And so it's kind of confusing. If you're just like looking at silhouettes, you're thinking, okay, all walkers go again. If you're not actually reading what it's telling you to do, I think the visualization of not having anything in that slot it hits it home a little bit better that nothing is happening at blue.
I don't even remember that from season 3. But yeah, I can see how that'd be confusing.
So it's interesting that like you guys mentioned that you appreciate the fact that like each row on a given standard spawn card has like different things, and you like that. For me,
Yes.
it's not that I don't like it; it's that I'm like confused by how could they have balanced this. It's just a stupid little thought that's fleeting. That like
so.
I missed the part where you play Zombicide and we're hoping for balance.
This really blew me away, more so when we played first edition than in my games with Black Plague. But in the fact that in early game, until you hit yellow, you like never see a runner or a fatty. And even then, it's mostly walkers until you hit orange, and then they start coming like more and more. It really makes those things feel more like upgrades instead of just kind of the walker doesn't really feel like it has a place as far as the horde goes, when it's a flip of a coin if they're that or it's something better that's worth the same amount of XP.
Yeah.
Whereas before it's more like they're showing up more because the horde is more progressed.
Well, it's weird because it's not always better. Like, so I'm trying to find, I've got cards in front of me. I'm trying to find one, but like, I remember I was like spawning recently and I was like, oh no, abomination. We're not ready for it. And then it's like, wait, oh no, we're on yellow now. Okay, just kidding. It's 2 fatties. Like,
I did see that. I don't know. I feel like they did that in this a little more. I don't remember seeing any of that in first edition.
They did do that in first edition. There was a blue abomination. So there had to be not abomination on the yellow, right?
So one of the things that also might be skewing your perspective on abominations at blue is the special abominations don't show up until yellow, but there's still 2 cards in the deck where you can pull a standard abomination at blue.
Yeah.
Basically every single level you can pull, there's 2 cards that you can pull an abomination. So there's 2 at blue, 2 at yellow, 2 at orange, 2 at red.
Okay, here it is. I got it in front of me. This card, it's number 25 for those keeping score at home. Blue is 1 abomination. Yellow is 1 runner. Orange is 5 walkers, and red is 2 fatties. Like, what is going on here?
Yeah, it doesn't really feel like progression.
Yeah,
the way I was saying, you got me there.
Yeah. I think most of the time they did that. That one was a very specific one where, in order to get that blue abomination, it was weirdly structured.
Yeah, it is.
Well, if you
I like
playing,
the concept of it being there.
I
mean, later on, when you get to like the comic exclusives and stuff, there will be entire cards that are just, no matter what, you spawn this specific abomination, and that's fine for abominations. I meant more for horde zombies.
Yeah, if you end up playing an entire, through the deck at one level, you're going to see that it averages out. It's whether or not you hit it early in the deck at yellow, and then all of a sudden you hit orange, you could start seeing the same type of zombies more often, which could lead to more zombies running out, and you having problems like fatty brutes or runners.
So there's one thing that's really bizarre about these little tokens, these dragon bile tokens. Some of them on the back of them have like a magical looking something on it. Does anybody know what's up?
Yeah, I don't know what that is either.
The little portal thing. I've always just assumed, because I haven't played every single thing possible for Zombicide. Despite owning it all, I haven't played every scenario, every whatever. So I just assumed there was a scenario somewhere that referenced that. But you asking me that makes me wonder if not.
There is
online. I haven't read through all the quests.
Online, the official online quest, there are some that have the portals.
Okay. Oh, it's a portal. See, I always thought it was like a force field.
No, there's one specific quest where you can jump into a portal and end up on the other side of the board.
Oh, that's cool.
Kind of like the vaults, but you don't have to open doors.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Although that does bring something up, something new in this one. We have a third kind of combat action. We have magic combat now, very fantasy themed. And magic, you can do more than with the magic action, because there's also enchantments, which are a separate kind of action, but a lot of skills affect both of them, which is like healing, and I think one is like move faster. It's like just temporary buffs, both of which are very cool, kind of flavor-wise.
Yeah, the magic enchantment thing, I don't know, for whatever reason, kind of confuses me. like I played it wrong with Baldric being like his spell caster ability is blue. That
Yeah.
applies to magic but not enchantment. And then I went back and I looked again and it's like, oh no, it's magic and enchantments.
Yeah, that's why it's
Right.
spellcaster, not like one free magic action, is because those are technically different.
Mhm.
So that's why it's not just called the same thing as the other ones.
Yeah. But yeah, I like the fact that there's different kinds of attacks. So then there, it gives obviously the designers and different sort of tools and levers to pull to, vary things based on other effects going on and gives us more variety to play. Well, Schmedley, who's
Anybody
your
have a
favorite
favorite
survivor in the core box?
I do like Baldric. I'm a big fan of all the spells and the enchantments. So I'll take Baldric before anyone else takes him.
Yeah, so if you listen to previous podcasts from us, you might think that I would pick Nelly because of the free move action. But
Yeah.
actually, after playing season 3 with Maddie, I'm a big fan of Bloodlust Melee. So Anne's my girl.
I was just so I was just gonna say Anne is my. I don't necessarily love her entire kit, but starting off with Bloodless Melee, Anne has always been one of my favorites because of the early game movement and killing. She tends to ramp up fairly quickly. Like there's some overpowered ones. Xena is always like a fun one if you just want to completely like stomp people. But generally tends to be my default one that I think of.
Yeah, Anne's a total badass. I would have said Anne, but
She's
then
mine.
I would have said Anne, but I realized like after one of my quests played for this review that I was playing it wrong because maybe it wasn't. Help me clear this up for me. So Bloodlust Melee, you're doing a move. You can move up to 2 zones and then perform a free melee action, right? That's the
Yep.
thing as written. That means you can't like jump into a zone with a bunch of zombies, attack them, and then jump into another zone with a bunch of zombies and attack them,
Nope.
assuming that there's still zombies in the previous zone.
Yeah, it follows the normal movement restrictions,
Yeah.
but it just gives you that aggressive charge.
Yeah. So the first quest I was playing with her, I was doing that. I was like, let's go. It's just like hopping around like, Anne's broken. She's amazing. She's my favorite. And then the second
Yeah.
quest, it just dawned on me. It's like, no, wait. No, you still follow regular movement rules. See, yeah.
So Ryan, I can see where you could get confused by that because on our previous podcast on Deceased, the trait that gives you Bloodlust Melee does allow you to move out of zones with zombies in them.
That's probably
So
what it was.
so it kind of takes away that. So I could see where it would be confusing if you were coming from that game and then playing this game.
Yeah.
Yeah, and hit and run is the one that lets you kind of ignore that restriction.
Right.
Gotcha. Yeah, devil's in the details. So yeah, if anybody is playing Anne, it's just jumping her from zone to zone with reckless abandon, you might be doing it wrong like I was. So yeah,
Yeah.
I would say my favorite probably then is Nelly, actually. So James, we're swapping, this time. I just like in this game, I'm missing what we had in first edition, which is like 2 zones per movement, extra, like a free search action. Like there's so much utility in Zombicide first edition that I wasn't getting in Black Plague from their blue skills as much. So, I was enjoying the utility that Nelly provides of getting that free move action is huge to be able to do that and, get to the objectives for while the rest of the team sort of fends off the hordes. So yeah, I really, really like Nelly. And I also want to say that my least favorite from the core game, just the worst, I don't know why he just never levels up, is Samson. He just sits there and does not level. I don't know what it always happens to me. So funny.
What's Samson's blue again?
Ironhide.
Ironhide.
He's the one with Ironhide.
Yeah.
Ironhide, I mean, just defensive skills in general, I feel like in Zombicide are kind of lacking.
Yeah. And for listeners, Ironhide is you get to roll a 5 or better, right, to defend a hit that you would get from a zombie.
Especially that one. It's just worse tough.
Well, the thing about Ironhide is it allows that fantasy gamer that wants to be the paladin. He wants to be that, I'll come and protect you guys, because the Ironhide, not only does it give you a 5+ save, but it also adds 1 to any other armor roll. So you combine that with plate mail. Now he's got a 2+ save, give him a shield. Now you're re-rolling 2+ saves. It's almost, unless he's facing an abomination, it's almost impossible to kill him.
All right.
Yeah.
No,
I
that's
mean,
fair.
he has some great moments, that's for sure. But otherwise,
He's just not going to get many points.
Yeah, he's not leveling like everybody else. I really like in this game they started off doing the thing of having like clear starting cards that were different from, or starting equipment cards that are different from the regular equipment cards. I wish they were a little bit more different because the starting cards are like slightly blue gray, and then the regular equipment cards are more blue gray. Kind of kills me.
I'd say they're distinct enough, but they do definitely get more different. Another thing about the cards, though, this is less so any kind of visual design, but the vault weapons come up way more than the pimp weapons of first edition that you'd see maybe once every few missions. Here, they're very much more a part of the game. A lot of times they're part of the objectives. They're not as crazy. There's not enough for everybody like in most of the later ones, but they're definitely more present.
Yeah, I really like the fact that they allow you to choose what starting weapons you have as opposed to randomly dealing them out. Obviously there's some thematic things you want. You want the wizard to have a scroll. You want the elf to have the bow. And then, the other weapons, depending on who's playing what and how they like to play. So I really do like the choice there. I think that's a good mechanic because unlike a lot of dungeon crawlers or fantasy themed things, there aren't really classes in this game. Anybody can pick up a spell and use it. Anybody can pick up a bow and use it. It's just whether or not you have skills that add to that.
Yeah, I think in my mind, I'm like applying sort of classes all automatically. Like you said, he's clearly better with the bow, so he's getting the bow, and he's our archer now. And like this guy is clearly our mage now, right? And then that sort of thing. And it's fun. It's just fun to do it that way.
The kind of unique offhand slot is probably the only thing we have that vaguely implies like a proper class system so far. Doesn't really line up a whole lot, in my opinion. It seems kind of arbitrarily assigned that offhand people who can hold daggers versus, No,
but I agree. I mean, I find that it doesn't matter how many times I play the game, it is incredibly rare for me to just break the implied class. I almost always sure, if you get that one piece of gear and no one's around, whatever it is, maybe something happens. But if you have spell casting, it feels wrong. And if you have somebody with just part of a crossbow and they're wielding just a sword and nothing ranged, it feels wrong.
I might be mixing up versions. Did first edition have accuracy for door opening actions?
No, this is unique to this Zombicide.
That's
right.
That's
unique to this one. Yeah,
that's unique here. You gotta roll dice to attack doors to bust them open. Yeah, that's right. This is the only game to do it. What do you guys think about that? Like, what do you think of it, Schmedley? Having to roll dice to open.
I hate it. I'm not a huge fan. There's like one spell. I don't think it's in this one. I think it's in a future one that does it for free, and you get that as soon as possible.
When you say it's a future one, you mean it's not in the core box? What do you mean?
I believe it's not in the core box. I think it's
telekinetic blast. Yeah, it's green board.
Interesting. So I have myself too mixed together to know, but I know I played with it recently.
I'm not a big fan of the door opening mechanic. I just think it slows the game down. I don't really know what it adds to the game. I mean, obviously, I guess the worst situation is if the second person playing doesn't even have a door opening equipment. So the first guy goes up there, bangs on the door, can't open anything. So now you got a guy with a bow or the spell. And what is he doing for his 3 actions? He's just waiting for somebody else to come open the door. It really seems to slow down the game. And if I were, playing 6 people all the time, I think that would really grate on me.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you if you're playing a full complement. I rarely ever play Zombicide with 6 people, so it doesn't bother me as much. And the part where I appreciate what it adds is that those decisions as to, okay, great, meaning you can't perfectly plan out your economy of actions. You have to prep for the fact that your action may or may not end up opening the door, and so you have to pace yourself around those. So I don't think it's essential for me, but I don't mind it.
To kind of play off what James said, I had a separate criticism that it feels like this game starts a lot slower, and I didn't connect it at the time. I think that might be because it usually takes several actions to open your first door.
Yeah. Yeah. And, kind of bouncing off you too, Alex, like I was thinking the same thing. Like this is about action economy, right? And it's about tension.
Yeah.
And so at first I didn't like it because it's like, I have to work to do this thing that was free before. But I started to understand like, okay, this is about action economy, and like for better or for worse, it's about the tempo of this game and how they designed it and how they want it to go. And you know, it could provide one of those funny moments, one of those funny stories that you might tell. I don't know if anybody, if you guys ever had this, like if you ever lost a game because you couldn't open the damn door in time. But I was watching, it just came up randomly recently on, there's like a YouTube short, and it was like this cute little couple, and they were playing Black Plague, and you know, and it was just a YouTube short, so it's like the, you know, vertical format, and they're just like rolling the dice. It's like, okay, let's open this door. Roll the dice, like not a 4. Roll it again. Roll it. Anyway, after like 9, it took like 10 at least actions for them to open the door already, and they're like, oh my god, we're gonna lose this game to this door. It was funny.
I think it would bother me less if so many of them weren't like 4+. I don't understand why there's a 50% chance I missed the door with my axe.
Actually,
that doesn't make sense to me.
Glad you mentioned that. So like I made a mistake about taking it for the literal face value. You roll 1 die, it has to be 4 or better, because it's what it shows you in the image, in the art. But that's not it. You're using whatever your weapon is to open the door.
Yeah. Yeah, but don't think about missing the door. Just think about it's a very strong door. Not all doors are going to cave to your first, hammer blow.
That's right. Door.
I think
door
most
game.
doors should cave with Warhammer blow.
You're using the wrong carpenters.
Worth noting, a lot of cards, I think this happens more as they go on, but I don't think first edition had any of them. A lot of cards had text that, like, if your other weapon is this or this kind of weapon, get this kind of bonus. Daggers and stuff had a few of them have that, and that's pretty cool. But also, favorite equipment is something that's in this and then shows up again in Undead or Alive, which is everybody has a slot where they can have a specific kind. They can have a sword or a dagger or a shield is, I think, one of them. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't, like I said before, feel that related to their character. And I actually thought the same thing in Undead or Alive when we get there.
Yeah, my opinion on that is it kind of takes away some of their weakness. So for the elf and the wizard, they can hold a sword. So therefore, they can have some chance at melee combat while they have their best weapons up. For the paladin, or for the warrior and the dwarf, they can have a shield because the warrior can have sword master at orange. And as I already mentioned about the dwarf, it helps him with his iron hide. And then, the other two characters have daggers to go along with either a great sword or a short sword or, whatever other hand weapon they have. So it makes some sense to me.
It makes some sense. All right. I hadn't thought about it like that.
My favorite equipment is if I can dual wield 2 repeating crossbows, especially with someone who's more efficient with ranged. Oh man, I'm having a good time, because each of those rolls 3 dice. You have to get a 5 or better, but if you're with Silas and you only have to get a 4 or better, it's a good time. Double repeating crossbows. It's like it's so baller. It's like, I guess it's the equivalent of 2 SMGs if you were playing it in modern.
What kind of crossbows?
Repeating crossbows.
Oh,
yeah. 0 to 1 range, 3 dice, 5+, and 1 damage each. Fun time.
Yeah, for me, like I don't even know the names offhand, but like I think the problem with myself is too mixed up. But like the weapons that give you that, like, roll a 6 and you get +1 damage or +1 die, I love those just for the sheer degree of trying to figure out whether you can or can't take down an abomination, because usually it's like I either can or can't, and it's one or the other. Those just give you that element of like, how badly do I need to make this risky decision right now, because I can probably do it, but if not, I'm dead. And I appreciate those.
Right. And I know a lot of people like to use this game as sort of their D&D light game, and I think that. Yeah, I think that mostly comes into play with like the different armors and shields. I mean, all of it, but like, Yeah, just the different armors kind of really makes me feel a little bit more like D&D because it changes your save throws. So I love that they have the different levels of like leather armors, five or better, chainmail armors 4 or better. You can pair that with a shield or pair it with your iron hide. And that's really cool. I really like those. And then the other thing that I thought was really cool and unique about this game is that you have the sort of utility spells like repulse, invisibility, and speed. Actually, they're enchantments. I really like the sort of spice and flavor that adds to a Black Plague game. I don't know about you guys, but I'm not usually milling through the whole deck like I might be in like modern setting. In Black Plague, like I get through maybe like half of the deck each quest. Yeah, therefore, like you don't, if you have speed early, it sort of changes the game on how you're playing, right? Or invisibility or repulse, those sort of really utility enchantments. But if you never see it in a game, which is common, like every other game, you're going to see or not see these things, then it changes things up, and I really like that variety, that spice that adds to each game, sort of helping make it feel a little different.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong, but you also reminded me of why I enjoyed the torch so much.
Yes, the torch. But yeah, it was really cool. Like it's kind of a fun nod too, right? What they did with making a Molotov and making a Dragonfire being the same kind of thing between the two. It's a cute thing. I like it.
I like the 2-stage kind of plan that you can kind of do it, like leave it for next turn if you want.
Yeah, it's really cool to be able to throw your Dragon Bile down and plan for that ahead of time. That's neat.
What's the point of the other side of the Dragon Ball token?
Flip it over to fire for a second and then
right, revel. And then you remove it. It's like
yeah, just revel in your Dragon Fire and then take it away. They never used that as like a.
I didn't even think about
fire?
that one. I was so focused on the portal.
There is a quest online that you can do where you put out the 2 tokens and they move once per turn. They start moving down a hallway and then go back.
That's
and obviously,
cool.
if you step on it, you die, or if zombies step on it, they die. So it's kind of like you got to dodge them.
I knew there had to be some use out there for them.
It's the post.
Anybody have any thoughts on the zombies? Speaking of the minis.
I mean, I really enjoy Black Plague. I think was the last. No, that's not true actually, because I would say Black Plague was the last one that had the level of zombie variety. But Invader also had a lot of zombie variety. But I still, between Black Plague and Green Horde, I do love one of the things that does make Black Plague one of my favorites is the sheer level of different things going on. My personal favorite combination for the starting off simple without going too overblown is just the basic 3 plus Deadeye Walkers and Wolves. But then from there you can expand so much in terms of any number of different mechanics that you're being thrown at that aren't too overwhelming, but just require you to adapt slightly differently to everything. Again, like I mentioned, opening doors, you can't open a door as the last action on your turn knowing that there's wolves in the deck, or Deadeye Walkers for that matter. You could have something three away from you shooting down directly into your zone. It's a problem. The crows are a fun little twist of just a direct movement anywhere they need to go. So I love the small little tweaks on them, and I think the sculpts in general are solid across the board. Spawn decks are great. To me, Black Plague is one of the strengths of Black Plague, that variety.
I do like the heavy focus on on animals for the alternate types, because I mean we had dogs in first edition.
And
crows. It makes more sense that you're a lot less removed from nature in a village than you are in a city. And that there'd be rats around in a game called Black Plague.
Consistently my favorite things about any Zombicide game, as far as add-ons and additions, are always enemy variety and also tiles. Like I love tile variety and different art and style there too. It really makes the game great. I can't imagine ever playing Zombicide Invader, for example, without those promo Xenos. And it's sad because you kind of only get them in the Kickstarter promo Xenos pack. But you get a lot of variety that you can get more easily in the whole Black Plague and the whole Zombicide fantasy setting, which is great. I totally agree. It just really spices it up.
About necromancers, we touched on them a little bit. Anybody have deeper thoughts on necromancers?
I like the pressure that extra spawn points can add to the game. So that part I enjoy. The necromancers themselves, I find a little underwhelming as far as a gameplay mechanic outside of that. Again, I really like the extra spawn point. I think that's nice. I love the extra pressure. Like just when you think things are under control, boom, you have 2 spawn points. You have to adapt around that. But outside of that, you're playing this almost like a little fetch quest, and then they're just wandering off the board. So they're not bad, but to me, the main thing that they bring to the table isn't actually themselves.
Yeah,
I
for
do
me,
like that they run away and just kind of try and make their spawn point permanent. Because they're like, I think even to date, except some of the Iron Maiden guys who can't move, they're some of the only zombies that don't chase you, that don't follow the normal pathfinding.
How often do you actually have a necromancer turn to a permanent spawn point?
Almost never.
I wish there was some that either faster or harder to kill, or did something that made that a bigger threat. Because I think it shouldn't happen a lot, because that could be a big problem. But it may have happened to me once that it turned into a permanent spawn point, but like I really don't think it's common at all. And I think it needs to be a drop more of a threat.
Yeah, I mean having like runner necromancers, or even just really honestly, even the base one having 2 actions wouldn't be that bad. All necromancers, because they do move really slowly. I guess then if you did that, they'd leave a lot of their protective horde behind.
They show up, and you're like, well, change of plans. We gotta go take care of that.
This
So
is the focus now.
yeah, like and but sometimes you do let it off the board. It happens to me once in a while. Not every game, certainly not every game, but once every few games, I would say. And it's interesting.
As far as the role of a boss, they do have that, like, this is now our focus effect a lot more than the Abomination does. Because the Abomination you can run circles around and ignore for most of the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, they basically keep you from camping out too long. If your group is going to like say, I'm just going to hold up a building, run through the entire equipment deck until we find everything that we want for everybody, and you just leave the necromancers out there to their own devices, you're going to find you're going a lot tougher to continue on, especially when you get up to the orange and red levels. At blue, are they dangerous? No. But on big enough boards, they can get away from you. And remember, every time you're chasing them, zombies are coming towards you. So especially if you've got fatty brutes with them or in between you, or an abomination around, because they are last in targeting priority when it comes to shooting, and no character gets marksman on their skills. So you can't just have your elf with a longbow start picking stuff off as you want to with, like, say you had a sniper rifle in classic. You have to get there and deal with them.
Yeah, I would have to say necromancers, not themselves, but the necromancer mechanics of the spawn zone, and then defeating him or them to then eliminate any spawn zone. That's my favorite thing about this game. It's it's the only Zombicide game where you can actually reshape the flow of the threat of the zombie hordes. Yeah, like it's like, well, we don't want them coming from that corner anymore, or from that side of the board. It's the only one that's kind of like has that tower defense aspect to it. I think there's a little bit of that in Vader in a different way, but anyway, I really appreciate, like, that's my favorite thing about this version of Zombicide.
Oh, I do like the fact that they have the different colored necromancer tokens, so you can kind of keep track if you do play with the Cabal rules. I'm not a big fan of using the Cabal rules. I've played several games with them, and I almost think it's an overcorrection. I think there's some people out there that think, oh, necromancers are too easy, so what happens if you put in 2 or 3 or however many?
I don't think I've ever done Cabal. Yeah.
The biggest problem isn't that you're having to chase down multiple necromancers. The biggest problem is the mechanic. If they get one zone away from, or one zone close to each other, then they extra activate again. So now every time you're pulling a necromancer card, they're activating. And then every time they get close to each other, they're extra activating. And it's just a chain reaction to where you can't hardly get to them before they do get off the board. And obviously the biggest detriment to necromancers getting off the board is once there's 6 spawn tokens on the board, and one escapes, you lose the game.
Yeah. When I first started out tweaking my Zombicide experience, my Black Plague experience, I messed around with a lot of abomination stuff and found my level of what I was comfortable with, and I very quickly found out that just adding extra necromancers to the deck completely destroyed you. As much as I'm like, I wish they were stronger because I do, but more kind of messes you up. Like I have to that's a balance that's been much harder to tweak around. Extra abominations doesn't scare me. Extra necromancers in the deck does.
Do you
Yeah.
prefer to play with like you have favorite certain necromancers, or you just go with the core necromancer?
I mean, I for my system in general for Black Plague, it's a little bit of a homebrew system, but my system for Black Plague is both for necromancers and abominations. Is whenever a necromancer or abomination is drawn, I roll a die on a 1, 2, or 3. It's a basic one. On a 4, 5, or 6, I draw from separate special decks and pull them out. And then the difficulty modification I do on top of that is I'll usually grab 1 or 2 abominations and throw those into the deck as well. So maybe one game I have like all the abominats in the game. And then when a regular abomination is drawn, I do the deck rolling system.
That sounds like a great system. I'm going to do that. I'm taking it.
Yeah, I find it generally works well for me. And then the other balance modifier I do, especially if I'm throwing in a bunch of abominations, is I do cap out the amount of abominations you can have at the level. So at blue level, you can have maximum 1 abomination on the board. At in the orange level, you can have at yellow, you can have 2, etc.
Oh, nice. I wouldn't have thought of that. That seems like a really smart, easy way to.
It just gives you the freedom. Yeah, it gives you the freedom of being able to stack the deck to handle the higher difficulties without messing you up too much if you get a bunch of bad draws early. Because if you get 2 abominations on the board and you're on blue level, you're gonna have a very rough, slow game.
There's one more thing before we jump into our missions. I really wanted to talk about the art style of the tokens, or no, sorry, the tiles. It bothers me. So like, okay, so the streets are like white, right? And like, so overall, like, I think it's beautiful. I think it's beautiful artwork. I love what Zombicide has always done with the zones, which is like, it's not just lines, it's not just a grid. Like everything in the artwork is carefully crafted so that, the zones are part of the natural sort of organic art. That's all fantastic. But like, when I'm thinking of this setting, I want like middle gray cobblestone for the roads, but this has white stone roads, and it bothers me. It looks good, and it's its own thing. It's like the only game that looks like this, and I appreciate that. And if they forethought like this, rolling into white death, absolute genius master plan of what has it been, 11 years. I don't think that they did though. But yeah. So anyway, I was wondering, does like Schmedley, do you ever think about the white roads on the tiles?
Not until you started talking about it, but I'm thinking about it now.
What about you, James?
Yeah, I like the contrast of it. I understand that it looks a little pristine, but they do a lot with the artwork to dirty it up, between footprints, blood splatter, detritus, whatever is nice. My only complaint, I have 2 very minor complaints with the tiles. One is if you don't read the rules close enough and you're an older Zombicide player, when 2 tiles come together with the street zones, if you're not understanding that the edge of the tile is the border of the zone, because they look like they connect to make one large zone, kind of like some of the street zones do in classic Zombicide. So if you're not understanding that, it can be confusing, and it can certainly confuse new players when they're looking at it going, well, is this 1 zone or 2 zones? What's going on here?
Yeah.
So I wish that they would have like a little bit more predefined edges all the way around the tiles. And then my other second thing, and this isn't really so much about the tiles, but people that design quests, I really hate seeing quests that have no doors on some of the openings to buildings that open up to openings. Because then it confuses me. Does that mean I don't spawn in this building? I just walk in? Does it mean it's supposed to be a solid wall and there's no door there? Or did they just forget to put a door token there, an open door token? I really don't like that when people design quests.
Something I've noticed as kind of a transition to missions here, because it doesn't have to be the case the way the tiles are laid out, but I feel like there's a lot more and much smaller buildings than we're used to in first edition. In Black Plague, I mean, most missions you have 4 or 5 buildings, whereas a lot of times it was like 2 in first edition,
I like that.
which
some of
is,
the
I mean, that's thematic. So
yeah, I like that some of the interior rooms really break the grid, and you get these kind of weird
Yeah.
diagonal rooms and pathways that it's just it spices it up. It's nice. All right, let's move on to our book club scenario segment. Until we find a better name for book club, in this case, it's book club
I like it.
quest. Yeah, book club quest. So yeah, let's see. We put polls out on our Facebook group and on the Discord for the audience, for the fans, for the community, excuse me, to help us out and pick out what our book club quest was going to be. We actually got a 3-way tie between Quest 1, Quest 2, and Quest 9. We ended up choosing Quest 2. Well, Schmedley ended up choosing Quest 2 because he's like, oh, I played that one because we were leaning a different direction.
we hadn't
he's
decided yet.
Yeah, and it's like, of course, Schmedley, I told you, you're fired from picking the
And it ended up being another survival type mission.
Another
So
grindy
for those
ass
keeping track,
scenario.
That's 3 for 3 on those, with 2 of them being my fault.
Yeah.
2 thumbs up from me, Schmedley.
Hell yeah.
Oh man, you snuck that one in, you turkey. Okay. So yeah, our does anybody have it in front of them? Our book club quest was Quest 2, the Black Book. Would someone
I
like
don't
to
have the
read
box
us
for once.
does anybody have it in front of them? To read us
I
the
do.
stuff, yeah,
Good.
the difficulty
slack.
and all that stuff, and then the little story, please, if you would.
Difficulty is
Okay.
easy. I remember that because it wasn't.
Right.
Okay, so my favorite part of this, well, yes, as you said, it's the Black Plague. The Black Book. Easy. 6+ survivors and 60 minutes. That's the part I love, hearing about the 60 minutes where they come up with these ideas is beyond me, because ours, well, I'll get to it. But the story is, now we know it's not just our village. The zombie plague has spread across the land. What's going on? The necromancer we killed held notes in his laboratory, most of them referring to a mysterious black book and other items of power. Exploring the surroundings could prove useful to get a better grasp about the threat we're facing. Of course, there are zombies on the way. Familiar faces turn to monsters. Hey, that one owed me money. So this is a 4-tile setup. Our objectives are to reach these objectives in any order to win the game. We have to steal the Black Book, take the objective in the central building, tile 8R. We have to claim the artifacts, take both vault artifacts. We have to feel the power. Get to the red danger level with at least 1 survivor. Special rules setup. Put the blue and green objectives randomly among the red objectives face down. Put a vault artifact randomly in each vault. Lost keys. Opening forbidden doors. Each objective gives 5 experience points to the survivor who takes it. What the? Magic trap. The green spawn zone is inactive until the green objective is taken. Doors and keys. The blue door cannot be opened until the blue objective has been taken. The green door cannot be opened until the green objective has been taken. And that's the mission.
Schmedley, you want to go first and tell us your experience with Quest 2, the Black Book?
I mean, we had a pretty standard experience. We never even needed to go into one of the buildings. We found the book relatively early. We kind of got into that middle building. And
how many players and survivors did you play?
So yeah, we had 3 players, 2 survivors each. I mean, it pretty much went out off like a standard mission. We did have a slow start, like I talked about. We had people getting to orange while one person was still at blue because of kind of our equipment setup. We kind of daisy chained from one vault to the other in that middle building. But getting to red, I feel like was a lot easier, a lot more tolerable than it was in first edition. I don't know if that's the addition of the kind of class system or like the synergistic equipment like we were talking about. Like I said, we had orange requirement vault weapons, which I guess we weren't supposed to. So I'm sure that helped.
Yeah, I agree. I felt like it was less grindy. It felt less grindy to get to grind to red in this than it was in first edition. All right, so you guys,
James?
Schmedley, so you guys, you won the quest?
Yeah, we won.
And Did you lose any survivors along the way?
I believe one person took a damage.
All right, James.
So backing up just a little bit, I chose this opportunity to teach two new people Black Plague. I hadn't taught anybody Black Plague in several years, so that was kind of fun. I have befriended a couple of game designers that are here in the local area, Carly and Harvey Cornell. They design their own games and sell them on their own website, which we'll have the link for if anybody's interested in checking them out. But I really liked the idea of getting a games designer's perspective on this game. So teaching them was a lot of fun. And with that in mind, them being very experienced cooperative gamers, my thought process was we would just play with 4 survivors. And I know that breaks the rule of 6+, but that's what we tried. I first started off with the tutorial so they could get the idea of the rules. And we played 4 survivors with that, had no problem. Then we played Big Game Hunting, the first quest, and with 4 survivors, we won that one fairly easily as well. When it came to the Black Book, it was a completely different story. With 4 survivors, 4 players playing, we basically had everything go wrong at the start of a game that you could have go wrong. The first building we opened up was an abomination at blue. The first objective we took was green. So we were fighting against the maximum amount of spawn points you could get. And it basically took us an hour and a half to deal with what was out in the streets, make it inside around till we could find the objective that we needed to get into the room, to get down to the vault. And basically, as we were making our way into the central building, things went bad. We started losing players and we lost the first scenario.
You're like, I swear this is a fun game as you're pointing to your giant wall of every single Zombicide product ever released. Like, I swear it's fun, guys. We'll play it again.
Well, when we got to Orange, obviously losing those 8 actions really took a toll. So we played it again. We dusted off our dice and, had a hearty lunch and got back after it. And with 6 survivors, we were able to get through. However, not without a fun story at the end. Basically, after achieving all the goals that we needed to get, except for somebody to go red, we had managed, because we had learned to stick together better, we had necromancers that were getting off the board, causing more spawn points. And essentially what it came down to was a necromancer in his next action was going to activate with 6 spawn points on the board, and we were going to lose the game. So what we had to do is we had to count the number of zombies that were 1 zone away from a certain player. We figured out that if we shuttled them the Inferno card and they made average dice rolls, they'd be able to kill enough zombies to go red, thus instantly having us win the game. And so we lost 2 players trying to get the card to them. We were able to get the card to them. That person did way better than average dice rolling, went red, and we won the game by the skin of our teeth.
It's a pretty epic cinematic moment at the end. Love that.
Yeah, we had a similar kind of start to ours. Went it down the hallway, opened the first door, and immediately faced ourselves off with an abomination. Rolled a die. It was a special abomination, and so we had, I can't remember his name offhand, but the one that attacks from 0 to 1 range, all zones, the Abomina, whatever. But so basically, we had an abomination that in this small little tiny little map is attacking at 0 to 1 range, everything, chasing us down the hallways, and we're trying to figure out how to survive because none of us can kill that thing. So it took us a while to kind of, and then I'm doing my usual zombie wolves as well as zombie as well as the Deadeye Walkers, playing a 6-player game, 6 character game, 2 players, 3 each. But it took a lot of just trying to stay alive for a long time. Before we were eventually able to, I think I got into the vault with Anne, made my way to the purple vault, managed to find a crossbow that actually could deal with the abominations, not drawing any, torches or dragon bile to deal with it. So I finally got the crossbow, headed back out the vault, took out the abomination. At this point, there was now don't remember, the Abomina Alpha, the one that turns all walkers into runners, was on the board too. But at this point, we actually had the ability to take them down, and managed to get to a point where literally the first 2/3 of the game was just trying not to die. But then we got enough momentum up once we got Anne and started making our way to the later orange and red. And we did successfully win the scenario, but it was touch and go there for the first 2/3.
So that sounds a little stressful. Was it like do you feel like it's a good stress or a bad stress?
Good stress.
Okay.
My favorite way to play Zombicide is to feel like you're going to lose, and then to power through. And then like there's a lot like we talked earlier, doing the nature of like playing these older Euro games and min maxing this that. The amount of times we were sitting there being like, okay, great, you can cast this spell, I can use shove, but wait a second, I was playing with what's her name? I was playing with Urina with jump, and so there was a really cool move that where I at one point going down this hallway, she was on her own and she like jumps over a whole lane full of zombies to like go get those last, objectives, whatnot. But there was a lot of min-maxing every single ability just to stay alive until we got that power ramp. Once we got that power ramp, it was a lot more control and a lot more in our hands. Of course, anything can always go wrong, but we had at that point. But until then, there were multiple points where we were like we took a lot of wounds amongst the team because again, the bomb alpha has 3 activations. We had 3 activations and we thought we had it, and then we got a double spawn on abominations, and he moved, and because he moved, we were like close to death. And there's a lot of trying to figure out what combinations of stuff we can do to not die, and it really felt like a puzzle. We did do it, and we felt rewarded for not dying.
Schmilly, your typing is really loud, by the way.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
It's okay. Yeah, so for me, for the Black Book, I played it twice. The first time I played it was solo. I used the 6 core survivors. After like what felt like an excruciating hour, I conceded. I lost. It was one of those like sort of rare times when you're like, we're not coming back from this. Like it's all stacked against, and it just, 1 or 2 mistakes were made, bad cards were drawn, and just the wrong way. It's like, just put me out of my misery here. Let's start over, kind of a thing. That's what that ended up being. Even with my mistaken first play of what we talked about earlier, Anne using Bloodlust melee to just jump around wherever she wants to, even doing that, and that got her killed. Also, it still was, it stacked way up against me. I just was not, it was just, I couldn't do it. So, attempt number 2, and in that first attempt, I remembered this sort of older Zombicide game design sensibility. I think that's there present. Feel free to fight me on it. Is like in the earlier games are like, you have to stay together as a pack. You have to be a school of fish and just move around together. There's no splitting. Don't do it because you will die. Like that's first edition and Black Plague. I feel like that those 2 games like are the worst about this. Like you have to stay together or you will die. I guess I'll just pause there. Like anybody feel strongly against that?
Ours started like that, but I feel like especially you get like a few, and I feel like this one does a better job at overcoming it than first edition, because I've talked about it a few times now. There's a lot of synergies and a lot of like kits you can kind of build out just from based on stuff you find. That lets like individuals be a lot more powerful and self-reliant to allow smaller teams. Like we split up into 2 groups of 3 at like late yellow, early orange, and we're fine.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I find to me stay together just means try not to go solo until you're ready for it. But
Yeah.
I almost always will have 2 groups, whether it's 2 and 4 or 3 and 3. I just find that if you stay together, even if the game is slightly more in your control, having 6 people always in the exact same spot almost always means somebody is not going to be doing the things they want to do because there's not enough stuff to do, and that's just less fun to the players. So usually I find it's either 2 and 2, 2 and 4, or 3 and 3. And then late game, once you have the right gear and you're powered up enough, you can sometimes wander around solo and survive.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with Alex on that. In this game, if you stay together too much, again, you're going to have the problem of not being able to get to that necromancer before he gets off the board. You almost need to have a dedicated team of street sweepers, that are trying to manage the zombie population while, other people take care of, business. And obviously, like any Zombicide game, it really comes down to what equipment you find early on. If all you're finding is water and a short sword, in a short bow, in one repeating crossbow, it's going to be tough to manage. In this game, you only start off with one thing that can deal with a fatty brute, and there's not as many things in the deck that can deal with fatty brutes as you might find in some other games. So it's really about what you find early on. Depends on how far you can get away from your group.
Yeah, so this quest is pretty tricky because it's quite spread out. All these little buildings on the very north and the very south areas of the sort of map. So it's really tricky. And on the second go around, I ended up going to that north building and parking there to find good enough gear until I felt like, okay, this is good. And now I need to start dealing with the hordes before I start running out of miniatures and having problems with extra activations. And then, in this particular game, like I finally really found my groove with this game. Like I feel like I got over a hump of like, I feel like with these Zombicide games, with any game really, like you eventually get that feel. Like it's unexplainable. Like you just get the tempo, you get like the feel of how this game is going to go. Like you start to get your hunches about like, okay, at this, like in the next round, it's gonna go south. So we're gonna deal with this thing now, this threat here, and then or that threat there. And I love when that happens. So yeah, I kind of got that tipping point where I started to really get it, and I started to actually, for the first time, really have fun with this game. Because before that, I was about to show up to this episode and be like, look, man, necromancers are a bummer, abominations of blue are a bummer, double spawns are a bummer. Like there's so many bummers. Like, what is this game? I was about to do that. And then I started to finally get into
you weren't a fan of that stuff before.
Yeah, I wasn't. Like I felt like it was I still feel like this game is more random than the others. And it's that still sort
There's
of bothers me a little bit.
That doesn't stick around.
Yeah. It's more random. Like the double spawns, you either get a lot or you don't, and it just makes it very random, and like double spawning back into the first spawn zones and all that.
Yes, that's the one.
Yeah. Or back into the first room of a building. All of that. Yeah. So that stuff to me was a huge bummer in the beginning, but now that I've kind of get much better feel of the tempo of things, I'm enjoying it a lot more. And so let's see. So yeah, the quest overall, it was still a little bit of a grind. Any mission quest scenario, having to get to red is probably going to be a bit of a grind, and it was. This, I think, took about 2.5 hours. I won, again, solo, playing with 6 heroes, survivors, whatever they're called in this one. And yeah, again, I had fun with it. And that's when I also really started to understand my favorite aspect of this game, which is that, killing necromancers means you get to reshape the flow of the game. And that was great. It's like, okay, they're not coming out of this corner, and I'm controlling the flow that way. And then I can have my team or my teams. I did find that, as the game goes on, yes, you can kind of split your group off into several groups and get things done. I have to call out an MVP. Here is Anne with a great sword and a dagger, rolling 6 dice at 5+. With bloodless melee is it feels good. And again, Silas dual wielding repeating crossbows and getting his with his skill, he rolls 4 better to hit on those. Oh, just gross. I love it. And that's how I was slid into red danger for the win.
In this quest too, the necromancer spawn point, being able to remove the right one is really key in this particular quest. Because obviously there's 2 different colored doors you can go through. You only have to go through one. You don't have to go through both. So finding either the green or the blue objective and then waiting till you can remove the spawn point that's in front of that particular door is a real key to winning this quest.
That's true. That's what I did. I think I got 3 in the upper right. 3 spawn zones up there. It's the conga line of doom that I was just executing again and again and again. It's fun.
I was going to say something. Speaking of necromancers and moving spawn points, if I can bring up another mission, is it mission 9, Hell Zone?
Yeah,
Quest
Hellhole.
9? Hellhole.
Quest 9.
And this kind of dips into rules you might have missed, which is our next segment. I see so many Reddit threads being like, hey, how do you even do this mission? Because it says move all the spawn points to this zone, and it doesn't remind you how to do that. It doesn't, not a word about necromancers in the entire mission write up. It is, but it's also probably one of the most unique missions in Zombicide, I think, because it's so reliant on a mechanic that's here and nowhere else. That you have to, a lot of missions in modern say you can remove spawn points if you do this, or some of them say even like move them on top of the first spawn point. But this is the only game where you have like this kind of freedom for moving them around. And there's a lot of strategies it opens up, not even just in this mission. This is just the only one where it's part of the objective.
Yeah, I agree with you, Schmedley, about it being unique. The closest thing I could think of is there's a mission in Classic Modern where you have to have a Molotov and all your people in 2 cars. And then in the same round, you have to throw your Molotovs at the spawn point and get out in cars in the same turn.
Wow.
So it's kind of like this one in the fact that you have to have all the spawn points and then be ready to destroy it all. Otherwise, you risk losing due to necromancers escaping, from the spawn points.
Yeah.
I saw the same threads because I had the same, I was like, wait, what? How does this work? And so, yeah.
Yeah, we went over it a little bit.
Yeah.
When I was researching that question, I saw like easily 10 people asking like, hey, what's this mission even?
Yeah. Well, because it's funny because like in the book, it says get all spawn zones on the board in the hellhole. But I saw
it does say check necromancers.
It does.
People
just
ignore that part, I guess.
Check necromancer rules. But the thing is, when people are asking Reddit, they're like, yeah, you just got to move all the things. It's like they're saying move, and it just completely breaks it. And that's when I was like, what? How do you move a spawn zone? Like you do not move a spawn zone. You get the spawn zone there. I mean, rules.
Yeah, that's true. It's a little misleading.
Yeah. But yeah, this mission quest was super fun. For me, it took me about 2 hours. I played it solo. I ended up winning and just flipping that tile to the flame and taking a picture of it, sharing with you guys before, just because so I could do it. And, it was fun. I went through like that first giant building on to the right and just kind of worked my way through everything. And just sort of went around, and got what I needed to. I mean, basically you're just kind of stalling until the necromancers happen to spawn in the hellhole is really what it comes down to. Right. And so that you can then rearrange the spawn zones to where you need them to be, spawn points, spawn tokens, whatever they're called.
Tokens. Yeah.
It was actually a lot less intimidating than I expected. But it was great fun. I actually got my wife to play a game with me. So we played Quest 3. What's that called? I
think that was the third one in our 3-way tie, wasn't it?
No, I think it was 1, 2, and 9. I think, yeah.
Oh, was it 1, 2, and 9?
Yeah, Quest 3, The Shepherds. What are you doing here? So you gotta rescue the town folks, which are objective tokens. I was like, I gotta have some kind of like NPC miniatures around here somewhere. I didn't, unfortunately. But I really wish that, we weren't just using just plain black tokens with a red X on them to convey that this is a townsfolk. But anyway, the cool thing was that, with this one, they're hidden infected among these objective tokens. So they're blue or they're green objectives. You flip them over and it's like, oh, it's a zombie. Yeah. Anyway, you got to save all the people, get through that. And we just had a ton of fun. Like we were just laughing, having a good old time. I was like, oh, playing with other people is so fun. We ended up dividing into 2 teams pretty quickly, and then reconvening in a way that just flowed and just worked really well. We went through each vault and got our weapons, and thankfully Baldric got his magic spell, and Silas got his special orcish crossbow right away, and orcish crossbow, right? We got through unscathed, not a single wound. And we even had an abomination chasing us almost the whole game too, but it was fun. That was a good one. I also managed to play Quest 1. Quest 1, the not the black book, the big game hunting.
Big game hunting.
Yeah. What do you got to do here?
And you're really picking up the slack on these quests.
Yeah, man. I'm telling you, for the next one, for the Kickstarter thing, I'm going to do another campaign. the Kickstarter campaign that they did. Oh my gosh.
I think you'll like it better than the other one.
That other one was wild for the first edition. Yep, Abomination on round 1 spawned with the Necromancer spawn zone comes out, and you do a spawn, or you do card right off of that Necromancer spawn zone when he comes out, right? Brutal. And of course, that was an Abomination on blue in round 1. Clovis dies. The game was punishing and not fun. Round 5, Nelly dies to extra activations. And then it felt like false hope. Baldric and Samson seemed to have things under control to get the last objectives. It didn't go that way. So this was actually the first thing that I played when I was still in that, like, I don't like this game at all era. But now I like the game. I've come around. So yeah, it's because I split the party in that first quest. I was like, don't do that, especially not early. That's our adventures with our quests in Zombicide Black Plague. Let's talk about rules you might have missed. James, take it away.
Okay, so for Zombicide Black Plague, if you've never played any other form of Zombicide, there's a few things to remember. Ranged actions, even if you use them on your own zone, are still considered ranged actions. And in this game, you actually don't automatically have friendly fire. You only hit your friends on misses. So that's pretty cool, and it's a little bit different for people that are used to playing Zombicide. Searching is also the only action you can't perform while zombies are in your zone. You can trade away with your friends as much as you want, pick up objectives, open doors. You just can't search. In this game, opening a door. So obviously, as we said before, opening a door is a new mechanic in this version of Zombicide, needing a dice value. And you got to remember that you can only use the dice that are on the card for melee. So things like daggers or +1 melee skills, you cannot add to that when opening a door.
Whoops.
So your short sword's getting 1 dice, no matter what.
Oops, I shouldn't have been adding my dagger to my roll against the door.
Nope.
Oh, are you doing that?
Whoopsie.
And then, so that makes not only the axe, because it doesn't require a roll to open the door, or the great sword, probably your 2 best bets, as you get 5 dice with the great sword to try and open a door.
Wait, sorry. So shouldn't dual wielding apply though? Because you're still using just the dice that are printed on the cards.
Nope, because it's melee.
Yeah, dual wielding is only for melee.
Yep, not for opening doors.
Okay.
And magic and enchantment actions, as you already brought up, that can get confusing to people because people think the word magic and enchantment are basically the same thing, which I completely understand. So you just need to really pay attention to whatever skill you have, whether or not it gives you a free magic action or a free enchantment action or both. Same thing with adding dice rolls to those skills or abilities.
They should have called it like spell and enchantment or something. I feel like would have been less confusing.
Yeah, I mean, something to separate them a little bit better. I don't know what the best thing is, but just pay attention to that. Armor rolls and shields. A shield allows an armor roll, but it's not armor. So that means you don't get a +1 to your armor roll for Ironhide. So just kind of keep that in mind. Necromancers only make you lose the game if there are 6 or more spawn zones on the board when Necromancers escape. I think some people gloss over that or don't remember that, and they think, okay, if a Necromancer escapes, I've lost the game no matter what. And also just keep in mind, if you are somebody that likes to play with more than 6 survivors at a time or more than 6 players at a time, there is a scaling mechanism for that. So 7 to 8 players, you get to add 1 more spawn zone to that limit. 9 to 10, another, so on and so forth. Vaults and vault artifacts, no line of sight into or out of a vault. And vaults may not be searched. And a survivor spends an action to take a vault artifact. It's not a search action. So if you have a character that has a free search action, you can't use it to grab the vault artifact. Zombie attacks. So if you are a classic Zombicide player, understand Feeding Frenzy works differently now. You can now put all your attacks on a single survivor. You don't have to equally take that damage. So this is once again where somebody like the dwarf with plate mail, Ironhide, and a shield becomes a real lifesaver, because if you got 20 zombies, you can make him make 20 saves. and hope for the best.
Wow.
Um, zombie moving, splitting does not cause an extra activation. So when zombies split, if you run out of miniatures, that does not cause an extra activation. Zombie spawning, fatty brutes do not come with 2 walkers. I got to be honest with you. I probably played an entire year playing Black Plague and thought that they came with 2 walkers every time. I didn't even bother to read the rules to see that they didn't. I just assumed they did. And so my games of Black Plague became a lot easier once I realized I was playing that wrong. Friendly fire only misses in ranged or magic combat actions cause wounds to survivors. And then, of course, to me, the biggest changes from old Zombicide is survivors can now hold 8 equipment cards. They get 3 starting wounds. They have access to armor and may choose their starting weapons. Doors now require a successful dice roll to open. And then zombies, fatty brutes do not come with the 2 additional walkers, and necromancers are a brand new type of enemy.
So yeah, we've been talking a lot about mechanics that are in this setting and only in this setting, but having everything laid out like this, it seems like there is a lot more that Black Plague started and then stuck around than the stuff that kind of stayed in this setting, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, one thing I keep getting confused about is the feeding frenzy thing, right? So in first edition, it was you had to distribute it to any and all survivors, right? But in this one, they changed it to where it's you could just put all the zombie attacks on just one survivor if you wanted. Which way did it go? I
think it comes with the armor roll.
Yeah. Do you remember? Do you guys know which way does it go for future Zombicides now? Do they all go this way now?
I believe in Invader, it's this way. I don't know. I'm not as familiar with Undead or Alive or Marvel.
Well, the biggest problem with Marvel Zombicide second edition, or I'm sorry, modern second edition and Invader is, remember, they changed the mechanics to where you lose a mission if you lose 1 survivor. Whereas in this edition and classic, you can lose X amount of people and still win the mission quest. So that's why the distributing wounds amongst other people in the other games doesn't quite mean as much, because if you were going to lose somebody, well, then you're going to lose the game.
Yeah,
I might be thinking of my house rules then.
Yeah. So that was all distributing wounds and splitting. It feels like those kind of keep changing on us, and it's giving me whiplash a little bit. But
they're very obscure, the kind of stuff that doesn't come up as much as most of them. So it's hard to keep track of them.
Yeah, first world problems.
You went through that really fast. Hold on, I'm still catching up. I didn't remember that they dropped that friendly fire rule this early, which is like we talked about, easily one of the more questionable decisions in first edition. So I'm glad.
Did anybody, at least early on in this game, when you didn't know any better, oh, cool, I'll just fire into that zone and and I won't miss, whatever, it's going to be fine. And then you kill your survivors. Did you guys ever fall into that trap?
I do it with Silas all the time. It's a 2+ roll. How could it go wrong? Every single time.
Right? Oh my gosh. Yeah. When he misses the 2+, it's brutal. It's like, come on, Silas, get it together. Yeah. What would you say the ideal player count is for Black Plague?
I think it's pretty much along with the other ones. I think 3, everybody has 2 players is kind of that sweet spot.
Yeah, my opinion hasn't changed.
Survivors. Yeah.
My opinion hasn't changed on that. I think 3 is the ideal number. As I said, these last few games I was playing with 4, and I was more than happy to give the 2 new players the extra survivors so they could learn more about the game. But I still think 3 is the magic number.
Yeah, I completely agree. 3 is great. 2 is still a fun time, and anything higher to me, I'd rather play a different game.
Really? I wouldn't go that far.
Meaning, it's not that I don't like it. It's that once you get to 4, there are so many great games that play well at 4 that I don't need to play Zombicide at 4. So Zombicide to me is a 3-player game or a 2-player game. It's not that it's so bad that I wouldn't play it. It's just that there's better games.
I do think most Zombicides are very awkward at 4 and 5 players unless you have a full team of 6. Except the superhero ones are fine at 4. They're meant for that.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm curious, Alex, your perspective on that. Is that because it's longer at 4, or is it the awkward division of
the
survivors?
Yeah. purely about the survivor count and the distribution there.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. 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 Because I've played Zombicide at 6 players, and don't do it, anyone. I mean, do what you want, but like
I've had it
it's
work
too much.
pretty well, and I've had it really drag on.
Yeah, really drags for me, in my experience. But yeah, my ideal player count still, like, I still want in any game to, like, immersion is like probably my most valued, the most valuable aspect to me of playing a board game, sitting down at a table with people, is being immersed, whether it's immersion in like the theme of the game or immersed in like looking at the person across from the table, and we're doing this thing and we're very engaged and we're not looking at our phones. Anyway, with Zombicide games, I always want to play it with one character, like one person plays one character, and it's very immersive that way. If you start to, everybody's controlling multiple characters, then like the immersion sort of breaks a little bit, and it's a different kind of a game. Now it's more of a tactical, strategic tactical puzzle solving thing. And it is that, of course, but yeah, this is mainly, I think this is one of the bigger reasons why I really like the Marvel Zombies game, because you get to be the Hulk. You don't have to be the Hulk and Black Widow and Captain America or what have you. Getting ahead of myself there, but yeah. So if I can ever find a 4-player or a 4-hero survivor mission, I'm gonna grab it. But in this one, I played this with my wife, and I was worried about her handling 3 survivors, and she did, and I did, and it was fine, and like we had a great time. So yeah, this game still really works really well at 2 players, and I think at 3, and yeah, I'd say 2 and 3 players are probably the ideal player count to me as well.
I vote to solve your problem in the future. Just play as Loki plus one other, and then you can pretend that the other is one of Loki's like forms, tricking people.
There you go. Nice. Or play as all the different Spider-Mans, and you could play a clone. You're just like, oh, it's Clone Saga. It's fine. Okay. What are essential expansions? Somebody mentioned this on like one of our YouTube videos, I think, or somewhere, and they're like, yeah, I really want to like listen to this and like find out what the essential expansions are. Even though we're trying to compartmentalize things in the way that we do, I think it's an important aspect of doing a review. So with so much out there.
Yeah, we can like most of the big box stuff has their own episodes, but I mean that's way down the line.
Yeah. So
on
Alex,
the timeline.
Alex, you were touching on this earlier. Do you want to explain again? Like, what are the essential expansions? What do you have to have for the best Black Plague experience?
For me, my go-to when I'm trying to be mindful of budget friendly, but what I think really elevates it to like 95% of the experience, it's going to be the core game, Wolfsburg, some Deadeye Walkers, and then the cheapest Abomination pack you can have. That gives you everything you need for the core game, because you need to be able to play. It gives you Wolves and Deadeye Walkers, which I think are the two strongest degrees of variety and forcing you to really rethink how you're being challenged as things pop up. And then you want some Abomination variety. Like you don't want to play with just the base Abominations. So that gives you a nice mix of stuff, and it gives it to you at a relatively budget-friendly price point.
I think, at least compared to first edition, the Black Plague core box is really a complete experience. As far as the expansion, are we limiting ourselves to expansions out with Black Plague?
Yeah, I think anything fantasy.
Okay. I do like the familiars in Friends and Foes, and I do think the spectral walkers or the spectral zombies, just as the kind of forgotten third brother of Berserkers and Toxics, because now there's a third combat action, is like a cool addition. So yeah, I'll go Friends and Foes.
For me, limiting to this to just what you could have gotten in the Kickstarter, or AKA, I would have kicked myself if I had not bought these in the Kickstarter. I'd been a part of it. Going in order of what I think is both combination of budget friendly and most important to the game. I think the Zombie Bosses box with the 3 Abominations, for the price that you could have gotten that originally, getting 3 extra Abominations, I think is a no-brainer. I think Wolfsburg is probably your second best bet. thinking that you get 4 extra heroes, the wolves, another abomination, extra tiles, and 10 more quests for $50. That seems like a no-brainer to me. And this might seem weird to some people, but the 3D doors, the 3D doors are really big to me. I really like being able to clearly see the doors on the board. They don't get moved around as much as the tokens do. The physical ability to actually open them is fun. So the 3D doors. After that, Deadeye Walkers. And Deadeye Walkers is lower on my list, mainly just because, to be completely honest with you now, trying to get them can be quite expensive. The Hero Set Box 1, I would only say that the 5 heroes in them are fun. You also get some extra dashboards and some extra starting equipment. So if you ever do run in that situation where you want to play with more than 6 survivors, then you have the ability to do that as well with that hero set. And then after that would be the Murder of Crows. They're just another fun element to have in there. Are they as good as the wolves? No. Are they as good as the dogs? No. But they're another zombie type that you can throw in there, and they're fun.
I just want to correct myself real quick. I forgot Spectrals come from No Rest for the Wicked and not Friends or Foes.
Yeah.
So I'm going to change my answer to that.
How dare you?
Although I do still like the familiars.
Yeah, I totally agree with I think what you guys said. Yeah, the wolves in Wolfsburg, a great enemy addition to spice things up, to really provide variety and tension and scary moments. The Deadeye Walkers, and the doors too. I totally agree. Like, I've got to have my bling. I've got to bling it as much as I possibly can. The doors and the the 3D plastic token pack, or is it 3D plastic? The plastic token pack that Alex talked about earlier. It's I like some of it and I don't like other parts of it. So the marked things like objective tokens and spawn zones, they're a no-go. I can't use them because they're painted ever so slightly wrong. So they're marked. So you can tell by looking at them after a while, oh, that's the green objective. Oh, that's the blue objective, because of the way that red X wasn't painted as well as like the other ones. So it's, they're all varied in such a way that I can't really use them. That's unfortunate. I've seen that in a couple of different Zombicides where they've had the plastic token packs, where that's come up. So Schmidley, who is this version of Zombicide for and not for?
Well, you brought up that a lot of people treat it as a kind of diet D&D, so it's definitely for, and I think James said something about this too, it's definitely for like the old hat fantasy board game enthusiast, because it definitely has the style and the kind of generic magic system that's just like, this is your high fantasy setting with all your wizards and elves. Who is it not for? I mean, if you're going for a Zombicide, the setting is pretty much down to preference of flavor. So I just have to say, sci-fi fans.
Yeah, if you're a person that likes fantasy and easy to learn rules and easy to learn dungeon crawler, then this is for you. But if you're a fantasy player that has to have a campaign system and some kind of game to game progression, then this isn't going to work for you yet.
Yeah, it's definitely very rules light as far as fantasy games go.
Alex, what do you think?
I mean, so I'm biased because this is my favorite Zombicide in general. So, like, I think that, I mean, to me, this is the one I would generally recommend if someone's a fan of the genre. I don't know how to distinguish the target audience outside of, if you don't like Zombicide, this isn't for you. If you do like Zombicide, I like it. It's been the most successful one for me. I think that outside of all the ones I've tried, I've had people complain that some were too easy. I've had people complain that Undead Alive was too hard. I've had some people who don't like Marvel. So I guess I'll just go with theme. If this isn't your theme, then it's not for you. And if this is your theme, or if you're even neutral on it, I like it a lot.
Yeah, it's funny you mention that, because that's where I am. So this is still my least favorite Zombicide. I like it better than I had before. Like setting up for this review and then finding my groove with this game. And that's just because, like, if I want to play a fantasy setting game, I want to play a fantasy setting game. This is just zombies, unless of course you start adding dogs, wolves and birds and rats. But that's not enough for me. Like, I want to play, like, I want to play like a fully fleshed out fantasy. Okay, here's the thing. Here's why I like modern. Okay, because modern is a mundane setting with a fantastical element of zombies, right?
Yeah.
Fantasy is a fantasy setting with a mundane aspect of only zombies. So that flip doesn't work for me. Like I'm gonna every time I will rather play Massive Darkness, Chronicles of Drunagor.
I was going to say,
and
it
Hero
doesn't help that
Quest.
the same people make a much more dedicated fantasy game.
Yeah. Because I want more variety. However, if someone's like, let's play Black Plague, I'll be like, okay, cool, let's do it. So I'll still have it. I still own it. I still play it. I'm still excited to, as for the sake of the show, if nothing else, dive in and play every expansion, because I haven't played everything. I haven't played every little piece of component that there is out there. I haven't played any of the Green Horde stuff at all. And I want to play more of the quests in Wolfsburg. I think I only played like one just to kind of do it. But so yeah, I'm excited to play more of it. But for again, at the end of the day, if I want to play a fantasy game, I want to play a fantasy game, and it's not usually going to be this one. So yeah, I guess it kind of comes down to theme again. And I guess like if you don't like a harder game, Black Plague can be harder, can be more punishing. Than if you really like second edition Zombicide or Invader, that are the two kind of have the reputation of being easier games, or even Marvel Zombies for that sake. You might not like how hard this game can be, nor punishing this game can be. All right, if you like Zombicide Black Plague, you might also like.
All right. Well, I won't steal Massive Darkness from the people who have actually played it, so I'll say I don't have a whole lot of fantasy games. I'll say Too Many Bones. It's another cooperative fantasy game. It's not a whole lot like Zombicide, but it is vaguely dungeon crawly, and it has a lot of different skills per a high learning curve. It is a chip theory game, and they're known for that kind of learning curve.
So when I was younger, I used to love Hero Quest and Warhammer Quest. Obviously, they're slightly different from this, but on theme and dungeon crawlers. So if you can find an old copy, or if you have an old copy on your shelf and want to dust it off just to see what it was like back then, you might want to try those. Another older game, it came out in 2010, is Defenders of the Realm from Eagle Griffin Games. It's basically the Pandemic system, but with fantasy theme and dice, and it's a lot of fun. And then the two most obvious games to add to this is Massive Darkness and Zombicide Green Horde. Those are the two.
I think Green Horde might be cheating.
Black Plague, if it's the little brother to Massive Darkness, and I don't mean that in any bad way, because sometimes little brother's more fun to hang out with. But Massive Darkness is a heck of a lot of fun. And then, of course, if you love this, then you got to track down Green Horde.
Yeah, for myself, I'll say one that's, if we're going for ones that aren't available, check out Dead Keep. I think the Dead Keep definitely is going to have a lot of overlap and feel familiar, and one worth checking out. And if we're looking for things that are currently available, I'm always a sucker for Cthulhu Death May Die. And if you appreciate the general fun of what Black Plague does, but want a slightly different flavor, theme, and slightly different everything while maintaining the feelings, I think Cthulhu Death May Die will deliver that.
If anyone's interested in Cthulhu Death May Die, they just finished up their most recent campaign. Since they're on GameFound now, and Pledge Manager is open for everyone when that opens, and they're reselling all the old stuff, so it's a great time to get it if anyone's interested.
Yeah, and you can get a giant Godzilla to fight your giant Cthulhu.
Yeah, I mean, I expect, he's not in frame right now, but expect there to be a big Godzilla and Cthulhu joining my Galactus at some point.
I expect James to make a giant Godzilla versus giant Galactus custom something for us.
Hell yeah, man. Get on that.
Mm-hmm.
Make it three-way, actually. Get all of them in there.
Oh my gosh.
Figure that out. Why don't you?
Such a kaiju game now. So other recommendations, if you like Zombicide Black Plague, I think you might also like Rum and Bones, especially Second Tide. That's the second edition, basically. The dice combat operates exactly the same, but instead it's player versus player, where you're each on a ship, a pirate ship, controlling, these fun, different thematic pirate factions. You got your Davy Jones animal people, whatever mutant faction. You got a skeleton faction. You got the Spanish Inquisition faction. It's such a fun game. It could be long, but I don't know why they think it's a 90-minute, like 60-minute game, but it could be long, but it's so fun and so fun to paint if you're into that. And the combat is very much the same style. And you have like it's a MOBA style game, so you have like lanes of horde, pirates just walking, kind of go back and forth, try to destroy each other's ships. And what we failed to mention, there was officially a Black Plague, or no, not Black Plague, Zombicide First Edition and Rum and Bones crossover mission that they made. You can find that
I
online.
didn't even know that.
Yeah.
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, it's wild. I don't know why they didn't make a Black Plague Rum and Bones crossover. So another one is Besieged. It's weird. It's
My gosh.
Yeah, B-Sieged by Simon.
Yeah.
Also, I didn't mention Rum and Bones is by Simon. And I'm looking at it over there. It's a tower defense game. It even has a crossover pack for Black Plague, so you can use the heroes in that game in Black Plague. And
I didn't realize Black Plague was like crossover central over here.
It very much is.
Yeah.
It's good times. And that game is super fun. And until it's not, like you can get a really abrupt random ending. But if that doesn't happen, like if it does, you're like, well, that was on us. Like, whoops, the messenger didn't get back okay. But yeah, it's a tower defense game. You're in a castle and you're leveling up in the castle by running to different stations. And you're just firing at enemies, waves and waves of enemies coming from all four directions of a castle that you're in the middle of. It's kind of like Castle Panic and Zombicide had a baby. That's a good one. Alex, you're familiar with Besieged?
Yes, very much.
Yeah.
It's a great game. I'd rather play Zombicide, which is why it didn't last forever. But it was around my collection for like 6 years plus.
Nice.
A little fiddly at times, but a lot of fun.
Yeah. I still like. It's one of those like, okay, I'm going to paint it all now and then I'm going to play it. So it's been like probably the 6 years or whatever since I played it. I played it solo a couple times to learn it. I was like, this is amazing. Just because I loved it, slotted in. It's like, ooh, I do not have a tower defense game. I want a tower defense game. I love the marketing of this. Like, I could tell a friend like, hey friend or friends, do you want to play a tower defense board game? I know, right? Crazy. Let's do it. Boom, Besieged. Anyway, it's great. I recommend you check it out. Other general dungeon crawls I already mentioned before. Of course, we've been talking about Massive Darkness like crazy. It's like Zombicide plus, just more rules, more complexity, more depth, more of everything. It's also more fiddly and more mathy, and more stuff to organize. But it's great fun. It's one of my favorite games of all time. Also, other dungeon crawls like Chronicles of Drunagor, Hero Quest. I'm like, I have had so many, and I'm like, I'm drawing a blank on some of them right now, but dungeon crawls, man, they're a good time. All right. I think that we've probably about covered it, unless anybody else has anything else to add about our review for Zombicide Black Plague. I think that we can call it a wrap. Is that what they say? All right.
Yeah, sure. It is now.
Close the vault door on it.
Ooh,
There you go.
that.
Hey, there you go.
All right. Well, we hope you enjoyed our review of Zombicide Black Plague. Next episode will be part 2, where we'll really dive in on the Kickstarter and expansions. We'll deep dive on all of that and discussion. Thanks again, Alex, so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming.
And remind our listeners where they can find you.
You can find me over on the YouTube channel Board Game Co., where I talk about a lot of things. I tend to be a big fan of Simon games, but cover anything from family-friendly to medium to heavyweight Euros, party games, dungeon crawlers, basically anything you can possibly imagine outside of chit-based war games.
Yeah, honestly, like real talk, you're one of my go-to YouTube game guys. So thank you. Thank you for all your contributions.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it was great having you on.
All right, so that wraps up this episode. Thanks so much for listening or watching. Good night, everybody.
Stay nice, everyone.
Happy gaming.
Thanks again for listening to the Zombicide Fans podcast. Zombicide Fans is an unofficial podcast and is not affiliated with or endorsed by CMON or Guillotine Games. Thank you from your hosts, Ryan Messick, Schmedley Mayers, and James Fisher. And thanks to our special guest, Alex Radcliffe. Plus, our sponsor, BoardGameGoodies.shop, where listeners can save 10% with coupon code PODCAST. You can check out the show on all major podcast listening platforms and on YouTube. You can reach us at zombicidefans@gmail.com. The podcast is hosted at zombicidefans.com. You could find us on the Zombicide Discord and the All Zombicide Games Facebook group. All links will be in the show notes. Until next time, survive.